Hey, I just heard on the news there that Obama bought some books while he was on vacation, and I see they made up the titles. Probably didn't want to let you know what he actually bought, which was probably Mao's Little Red Book and, probably A New Society, Reflections for Today's World, which was written a little while ago by Che Guevara. So those are the actual books that Obama bought, if I'm guessing. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Mike, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Hey, Carl, ask me a simple question. I'm trying to figure out how a judge can sentence a guy to jail for 5 to 10 years and then fining and for court costs and everything for $50,000. Now, this guy don't have two nickels rubbed together. Now, how's the judge figure on getting his money?
Yeah, the short answer is I'm not sure the judge is planning on getting the money or not, because at the end of the statutory maximum for the sentence, they can't really continue to collect the money anyhow. Reality is, you're right, though, and there's this big lie in the law, which is, we're going to give you restitution and we're going to collect fines from this guy. And we're going to put him in jail for a really long time, and realistically, we'll never get the money out of him, which is why a lot of judges don't give big fines. But our legislature has created this mandatory minimum structure. And so, for instance, on a lot of drug crimes, there'll be a 5-year mandatory and a $100,000 fine mandatory. Well, great. Good luck. And if the guy could afford the $100,000 mandatory fine, he probably would have plea bargained himself with his actual money and said, I'll pay a big fine, but let's work out the jail time,
Yeah, I figured that.
So,
okay.
And the other thing is, where it really works a disservice or a terrible injustice is to the average person who goes to court and the judge says, Mr. Smith, you're going to pay restitution in the amount of $4,812 to the Jones family. And then the Jones family sits around, and once a month they get a check for $7.12 towards their restitution. And they think, boy, I thought when I was in court the judge said I was going to get my 4,000 some odd bucks back. And in reality, the judge should have said, Mr. Smith, you can pay $7.12 to the Jones family for the next couple of years, and then they're on their own. And at least they wouldn't have this false expectation, which led to a judge saying to me one time that he wished that he didn't have to order restitution because he knew that in so many cases it was never going to get paid. He was sick and tired of being the guy who got the angry letter saying, hey, judge, you told these people to pay restitution, and I still haven't gotten anything.
Yeah, well, the recent case there is that gal was the treasurer of the fire department that stole $66,000. She didn't get no prison sentence, but she's got to pay it back over 10 years.
Yeah, Durgan and I were talking about that yesterday briefly. He summons me from the golf course to talk about it. And long and short of it, there's a realistic chance she can pay it back, and that's why the judge did what he did. And sometimes, quite frankly, in white-collar crimes, putting people in jail isn't the best way to get the victim paid back. The best way to get the victim paid back is to make sure that the defendant's working hard and under the threat of a jail sentence.
Well, who the heck's going to hire?
Yeah.
And where's she going to get her income from? She stole the money to pay her daggone bills.
Yeah, well, hopefully she's got a plan. And you're right about that. That is a problem, and that might have been something that somebody should have explained. Now, in that case, remember, though, the victim showed up and said, hey, I'm okay with this. I don't really want her to go to jail, and that's important. The victim's the one who was the one that was, quote, hurt.
Yeah.
And while all crimes are against society at some level, I think the victim's input plays an important role in how courts resolve things, and it should.
Yeah, she was a long-time employee there, and so was her family, was involved in the fire department and so forth. So I think there was a play in there, too. Okay. Hey, well, you explained everything there pretty good, Carl. Thank you.
I try. Thank you for the compliment, and thank you for calling, and thanks for listening. I'm sure you got better important things to do, so I'll let you go.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take care. 540-0580 if you want to call in, tell us about a jury experience. You want to tell us about legal question you have, call in. Mike, you're on the air. Hey, Mike.
Hello?
Yes.
Hey, Mike Leonard. Question for you. I'm a landlord in Hershey.
Okay.
And I have a tenant who, it's a house, and when they get behind on their sewer bill, I end up being responsible to pay that, or they can file against me.
Yes.
And then I just got a note from the garbage company. Can they also do that?
The garbage company, it depends if it's a municipal service or not. Do you hire your own garbage company, or is that a municipal?
The township signs a contract with the company.
Yeah, so they'll probably do the same thing because they probably will be able to treat it as a municipal lien in that case to run it with the property.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
That's the short answer. You could double check with the company, but that's why I always ask that, because if it runs through a municipality, municipalities have that magical power of the municipal lien, which attaches to the property.
Right.
And so, here's how landlords get the short end of this stick. What happens is if I own my own house and I don't pay for municipal services, okay, the township has this power to make a municipal lien. So not only can they come after me for it, but if I don't pay, they can attach the lien to the property, and that way the township always gets paid. And that makes sense, right? I mean, it seems fair. I shouldn't be able to just shirk my responsibilities to the township if I own property there.
Right.
When you get to the landlord-tenant situation, though, the tenant signs up and says, yeah, I'm going to do this. Then they run the water 24/7. They sprinkle the kids for 6 months straight, whatever. Walk out on the bill, and guess who's the only one that it attaches to is the property, which is the landlord.
Yep. Okay,
All right, brother.
I knew the sewer, they had me there, but the garbage was a surprise when I got the letter, so I guess I'll have to take care of it. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the tenants. I've actually told people that sometimes it's better to include the utilities in the rent.
Right.
Sometimes you don't want to include the utilities in the rent because it's hard to be competitive, and people are stupid. So when you're explaining, they're like, well, the other place is $400 and you want $550, and you're like, yeah, but I'm paying your electricity and your water, so it's going to be about the same. But they don't get it. So there's another problem with that. But the reality is, if you're collecting it that way, you catch wind of it right away when they're not paying it.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Thank you for that.
All right, man. Take care.
Have a good day.
540-0580, Mike. Mike.
Carl.
You're going to give me a jury story.
Yes, I will.
All right, shoot.
I was on a jury here in Dauphin County, and it came out of a drug raid on a house. And in the course of that, they didn't find anything but a small amount of residual marijuana in an ashtray. They found some things that would indicate they might have sold drugs in the house, a scale, but there was no residue or anything. So what they did find is they caught a guy on the roof of the house trying to get out, and he had gone out through a window there. But what they tried to charge him with was constructive possession of a firearm. And the firearm they found was laying on the ground some 50 feet from this row of houses.
Right.
And their theory that was presented by the district attorney was that he had constructively possessed this firearm in the house, and then he had taken the firearm out with him and thrown the firearm from the roof over this hedge where it landed on the ground. And that so they were going to charge him with possession of a firearm. Since he already had a record, this was going to get him a nice fat 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one thing that the district attorney failed to do properly was handle voir dire right, because the one question he never asked anybody was, is there anybody here who is a firearms expert?
Right.
Because when they presented this theory about this constructive possession of a firearm, they had no proof in any way. Fingerprint, no forensic evidence was presented that connected this young man to the gun. The problem was that the gun was a .357 Magnum single-action revolver, and it was a cowboy type with about an 8-inch barrel, very long, very heavy, and brass frame. And so the theory that this thing was thrown from the second floor of a structure 50 feet out over a hedge, I found compelling because the gun in question does not have a safety bar.
Okay.
It has a direct pin firing spur on the primer of a round.
Mm-hmm.
And that also the photographs that they showed us of the gun showed that the gun had a very little bit of dirt on it. Well, I happen to own a gun very similar to that. And I dropped it off the tailgate of my truck one time, and it was covered in dirt.
Right.
The gun weighs about 6 pounds. And if you throw this thing 50 feet from a second floor of a structure, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. And, that's an area where, well, and here's the next question is, what made them theorize that he threw this gun? I mean, what was their
What theorized? What the real story is, they came with all their buddies from the Federal Marshal Service and all to do this big drug raid, and there wasn't any dope.
Yeah.
Because the guy with the dope probably got out, and this guy was second and late, and they caught him.
Mike, hold on. I got to go to break, but I want you to hold on because I'm going to tell you a story, and you're going to like it. All right? Hold on. Break time. Oh, I'm glad we didn't come back sooner. I was busy doing my Sling Blade impressions for Shane. All right, Mike.
Carl.
Okay, so your story is great because I tried a case. Police go to house, claim there must, and it's not your case, it's a Cumberland County case, but police go to house, claim there must be a pound of marijuana in house. Find nothing but a couple marijuana cigarette ashes and a bong or something like this. But one of the guys present at the house, they charged with constructive possession of a firearm because there was a shotgun in the house, and he was just, as they told the jury, just 4 feet away from this shotgun when they got in the house, and where they had him, he was 4 feet from this shotgun, and then he was a person not to possess because he had a prior conviction and blah 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 blah. But here's the thing: you find out. First of all, there's no marijuana, right? Or at least no pound of marijuana, just some leftover tailings. Number two, when the police raided the house and they grabbed everybody, they literally, this guy answered the door, came to the door, and they, took him down, so to speak. So you find out that the gun that he was 4 feet away from, he was 4 feet away from it because that's where the police put him while they were cuffing him. And number three, I brought in the guy who lived in the upstairs in his own little apartment up there who said, yeah, that's my hunting gun, and I, hunt deer with it, and I had brought it down, and it's kind of like November thing, and I left it down there.
Yeah.
And anyhow, and you're like, and the jury's like, was 10-2 to acquit. They still got two yin yangs who wanted to be like, because they got to put in his prior record because it's a felon not to possess, right? So
right.
Their thing is, well, he committed a crime in the past. He sold drugs, 10 years ago. He's probably up to something.
Right.
And you're like, oh, man. I hope you're good. You guys acquit this kid?
Well, the interesting story is we went back and the first vote was 11-1 to convict. I was the holdout. And everybody's upset because they want to go home. And they said, why? And I said, because this is all trumped up. It's probably, first place, the cop probably planted the gun. I said, throw down. I said, they're embarrassed. They got to bring something home. They figure he's guilty of something this will do. I said, because I can tell you what, I'll take my pistol out, throw it off the same roof right now 50 feet, and let's look at it. But I said, the big thing is this firearm would likely have discharged because of its construction, and I described it. So then we sent to have the gun brought to the jury room.
Uh-huh.
And I took it and showed them how it worked. Well, the next vote was we busted him for possession of marijuana for use, which he copped to. He said it was his.
Right.
But they acquitted him of the gun charge. Because it was just, there's no way I'm believing this kid's taking this gun, throwing it off a roof 50 feet over a hedge, and it just got a little grass on it when it hit the ground, and it did not discharge.
Right. And I know what you're talking about because as heavy as those guns are, so people that aren't familiar here, what you're trying to basically point out is like my Glock 40 S&W has a little metal plate that sits between the hammer and the firing mechanism.
Right.
And so I can theoretically drive nails with that gun, and it shouldn't go off because if the spring goes, it's not going to touch the primer of the shell. Correct. But the gun you're talking about, basically, if you're slamming it around, it is likely to accidentally discharge.
In the old cowboy days, the cowboys carried a $20 bill rolled up in that cylinder, and when they carried the gun, the hammer rested on the cylinder with a $20 bill.
Uh-huh.
That's because if they dropped the gun or something, it wouldn't go off, and the $20 bill was funeral money if they got killed.
I love it.
Why they did that, and that was what kind. Plus, I said, look, people in the hood don't carry guns like this. You can't run with this gun. It's a cannon. I said they carry Glocks and stuff because they're light. I said if they had this gun, somebody probably traded it to them for dope.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I know I talked to a state firearms expert one time, and he was telling me that a lot of the guns that they get that are literally, like gangbanger guns, are just in terrible, terrible condition.
Yeah.
And he said even the brass. He said, if you or I probably, and I don't know about you, but I go through a lot of brass, and so I probably touch it once, maybe twice if I'm lucky, and if I don't reload, then one time.
Yeah.
And he said for some reason if you're a guy who's got an illegal firearm, you don't walk down to the Walmart and buy a lot of ammo. So you take the 5 shells that you do have and you just roll them around and play with them all the time. Right. And he said the condition of the brass is usually just terrible to boot, which is an interesting side note.
Yeah. But that was the case. I mean, they were going to, run this guy up the flagpole because of constructive possession, and it was just ludicrous. I mean, there was no evidence whatsoever. I mean, the room he was in was probably 100 feet from where the gun was. And it was outside.
And here's the sad thing: if the government had done their job right, and asked and just did exercise their preemptory strike, where they don't have to tell anybody why they're getting rid of you, except that you know something about guns.
Right.
This guy'd be in jail for something he didn't do.
Oh, that's right. And the one mistake he made was in voir dire. He never asked the question, is there anybody here that knows about guns?
I was just in a trial not too long ago, and I had a buddy of mine who's a drinking buddy, and he ended up on the panel as an alternate because nobody ever asked if anybody knew me. And I figured if the DA's not going to ask it, I'm not going to ask it because the DA always asks it. Anybody know Mr. Rominger? and if he hadn't raised his hand, I'd have said, Judge, I got a problem because I think my buddy's not being honest. He should disclose that we drink at the Market Cross at least once a week.
Right. Well, we went down the list, and I was waiting to get kicked out, and it never happened.
Yeah. The other reason they like to kick people off too is. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when the government goes in, they break down the jury list. They know when the last time you voted is. They don't know who you voted for, but they got your voter's record, they got your voter's registration. You probably, if you're a gun guy, you listen to WHP, you're probably a registered Republican. If I could go out on a limb.
No, I'm a registered Democrat.
Oh boy, well they still left you on. That's a lot of times they knock the Dems off. Of course, it's Dauphin County, so it's a little different. But a lot of times they'll knock. If you look voter registrations, they try to knock the Dems off a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because Democrats are liberal wackies, and they're going to let bad people go. Just ask the prosecutors.
Yeah, I was amazed because I figured what was going to get me two things kick me off this jury. One is I knew a lot about guns, and two because I had multiple degrees.
Uh-huh.
And normally, when they see that, they don't want a guy on there that's been to college a lot.
No, you guys the short answer is you either want everybody equal or you don't want anybody too strong. And that's the theory.
Right.
Because then I'm only trying to case to one strong personality. And that worries us. The other problem is if you have a person who has a particular expertise, you're going to go – in fact, I had a DA that was so mad at me because during a case there was a nurse, and I pointed out to the jury, I was like, hey, one of you is a nurse. You have special knowledge about this. You should, tell everybody else on the jury about what a bunch of garbage the government's witness was. And the prosecutor thought that was unethical for me to single out a juror's profession and tell them to share their special knowledge. But the judge's instruction is they're to use their life experience and knowledge. So I thought I was just perfectly in line. The judge didn't have a problem with it, by the way.
Yeah, they opened the door.
But I wouldn't have left a nurse on in a case like that, but that's just me. I better let you go and answer some legal questions here.
All right, we'll see you.
All right, thanks. Take care. There you go, folks. There's a tale from the jury room. Gary, you're on WHP 580. Hey,
Hello?
Gary. Gary.
Hello?
Yes, Gary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, I got a jury duty notice about 10, 15 years ago, and the letter they sent me was very disturbing to me because they threaten you in the letter, and they say you could be arrested and fined and all kind of things, and I was really pissed. So I called, and I'm a veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Uh-huh.
I was in the infantry, and I was not going to put up with this kind of behavior. So I called and I complained, and they said, you have to do it or they can have a bench warrant out for you. I said, I am not going to do it. You should ask me. You should not demand it of me. And I was really livid. And I said that I fought for this country. I didn't fight for this kind of nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, in that case, you don't have to do jury duty. I said, wait a minute. Because I'm a veteran, I don't have to do it because I'm explaining why you shouldn't do this to any citizen. You should ask them to do it. I couldn't believe how they treat you.
Well, here's the theory on that, and I'll explain it. The theory is, and let's just back up for a minute. Theoretically, you can be compelled to serve on a jury, just like you were drafted, or maybe you volunteered, but just like people have been drafted to go to war, you can be drafted to be on jury duty, okay? And the law allows for that. It's considered a service of citizenship. However, and here's where I agree with you, I hate the fact that the government sometimes treats everybody like the criminal. So the Game Commission's a great example of this. Pennsylvania game laws just pretty much assume that every hunter's out in the woods trying to break the law. So they've written all these regulations in a way designed to help them with enforcement on the theory that if you walk out at night with your gun loaded, you must be hunting after hours. You might not, you might just want to defend yourself against werewolves or angry people in the parking lot. Who knows? But the presumption is, no, we need to have a law that says you can't leave your gun loaded after dark so we can charge you for that because we won't be able to prove you were hunting after dark, but we all know you left the weapon loaded because you must have wanted to break the law. And that's the attitude that a lot of government takes. And my theory on that is, you're right. The notice should be like, hey, here's jury duty. You should get here. And then if you call in and say, hey, what if I don't show up? Say, well, actually, we have some teeth in this system, and it's kind of like being drafted. If you don't show up, we're going to come get you. But why presume that, right?
Well, I wasn't going to let them dictate to me because that's not what I fought for, and I'll fight them again if they have to do that because they're the enemy now.
But you're saying that you wouldn't go on you don't think that do you think it's okay to compel people to be on a jury?
No, I think they should ask you. And I told them, you pay me what you pay the lawyer and the judges, I'll show up. Well,
actually, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, they don't like that at all. But the point was, they shouldn't demand any citizen. That's communism to me, and I'll fight them till I die. I don't care.
All right.
And
Well,
every Vietnam veteran out there, I hope, does the same thing because you can't confront these people one-on-one. You got to confront them when they're not ready for you. When the shit hits the fan in this country, don't you guys forget about it.
You can't say those words on the air, brother.
Oh, you can't say that?
Well, you can, but you're not supposed. I'm not supposed to encourage it or allow it. But I didn't bleep it because it's. I think that was a heartfelt veteran. Oh, did you bleep it? Shane bleeped it, so that's okay. Anyhow, those were strong words from a veteran, and I appreciate it. All right, brother, I gotta go to break.
Take care.
Ha ha. Come on, Shane, give me one more hour. One more hour. I can do it. All right. Anyhow, 540-0580. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Let's go for a hike. I'm going to get a couple buddies, maybe my girlfriend and a buddy, and, hey, let's go, or, bring your sister. I don't know, the three of us. We'll go hike around Iraq. Because, there's like a war thing, and I want to just kind of like walk around in the countryside and see if we can see what's going on. Oh, and then we'll accidentally walk into Iran. Ooh. Now, I'm just saying, maybe this is some dumb hikers who were just hiking in Iraq, but I kind of almost want to side with the Iranians on this one. I mean, just like, maybe they were CIA operatives. What do you think, Shane?
Do you feel like at this point we have enough technology that someone could figure out where the border was or where they shouldn't be? You know what I mean? We have Google Earth, we have all this kind of stuff, and there's at some point you figure there's enough technology to figure out where you're at in this world.
And in other words, I thought, my GPS batteries were out and my topo maps were out of date. I really thought I was in Iraq. But this is the thing. This is where my brain gets fried because I'm saying, I thought I was in Iraq. See, now if you said to me, I thought I was in West Germany and it's the Cold War and I accidentally went into East Germany, I might get you're a hiker in Germany, right? Kids do that. They used to hike around Europe. I guess now the only excitement you can get, you hike around I was in Bolivia hiking through the drug fields looking for some FARC extremists when suddenly I got kidnapped and I can't figure out what. Anyhow, I'm just crying foul on that whole story. I just don't. Maybe they really are some dumb hikers, but I suspect they're on the CIA payroll. So if I get picked up by a black helicopter later tonight, I'll have confirmation on that. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hi. How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
I was on 2 different jury trials.
Okay.
As a juror. And one was a federal jury of a mayor of Chester, Pennsylvania, 30 years ago.
Okay.
And I was sequestered for 25 days during the trial. So a very interesting experience.
Yeah, that would be.
Okay, you see, because first of all, the first thing that happened is the judge ruled that we can't, because it was about politics
Right.
and a mayor, we couldn't watch anything that had to do with sex, religion, anything on TV unless a federal marshal was there and was pre-approved. So the only thing we watched was sports in a common room. And the things that we discussed as jurors, independent, was really interesting because you talked about they knowing who we were.
Right.
The mayor was Republican, and we found out that everybody on the panel and the alternates were all Republican.
You imagine that.
And it was a 300-person panel selected, and I was like 169 in the pick.
Right.
So it gives you an idea of how far. And over half the panel was from Lancaster County, even though this was in Philadelphia.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. And, by the way, we were hung after 25 days. And I still remember the situation. He was accused, I remember 4 of the 5 charges, racketeering, obstruction of justice, 2 counts of tax evasion, and I forget what the 5th charge was.
I'll tell you, and I've said this to clients before, there are definitely people on death row who didn't commit the murder. There are people that are convicted of serious crimes every day who didn't do it, okay? It happens. Right. But if you want to walk into my office and just tell me that the government's targeting me for some reason and they've picked me out because somebody hates me or whatever, I don't usually believe that. I believe you might have just somehow got tangled up in something and now the police are running with the wrong guy or something. But I don't think anybody set out to, destroy you, okay, usually. But I always say to people, unless you're a state senator or another level of politician, and then if you're telling me that you're being prosecuted for no other reason than somebody's trying to destroy you politically, I might believe it. And that's why I always am curious. Whenever you see a mayor of a city charged with something, or a state senator, or like the bonus gate cases, or anything like that, or Ted Stevens from Alaska, or a famous baseball player, you always wonder, does he really do anything to get tangled up in this, or is this just one of these political witch hunts?
There were wiretaps. I mean, in 25 days, they probably played, I would say 48 hours of wiretaps to us.
Wow. Were they very convincing or not very convincing?
Not very convincing. They were people talking to the mayor, and there were wiretaps of people he had talked to that claimed they had the mayor in his pocket, but nothing saying the mayor took this or did this.
Right.
Very unconvincing.
Well, wait. Think about this one. Think about all the people that run around and they're like, "Oh yeah, Barack Obama's my best friend, and I can get you this.
Exactly.
I can get you that." That doesn't mean that Barack actually promised anything or even intends to follow through on that. Those are just some sycophants.
Right. And the actual, they were trying to charge him with tax evasion, and they brought us all his tax forms and money and bank accounts, and you're looking like, wait a minute, you're telling us that he may have taken $200 and we're spending 25 days in a hotel. So, the amount of money they were charging him with taking for tax evasion was incredibly small, like $1,200 is what they were trying to prove.
Wow.
And this was 30 years ago, so it was like, but, it was a very amazing case.
Yeah, it makes for a great story, I'm sure.
Yeah. But the second jury I was on, okay, I really didn't want to serve. And it was a murder trial in York County. And they asked me a question, and it was where a black defendant had killed a white assistant manager of a hotel.
Okay.
And they asked the question, do you think blacks get sentenced to prison for killing white people more often than whites do for killing white people?
Okay.
And I said, yes. And do you think that's fair? And I said, no, they should be sentenced to death for killing a black person too. And I still got on the jury. And I mean, these, and the only thing I was happy with, it was not a whodunit.
I picked that's good. I picked a death penalty jury up in a northern county one time, just 30, 50 miles from here, and I'm just laughing about it because when you're picking these juries, you get these what I call the crazies. But this guy came in who was probably obviously intoxicated, but it was hard to say. He just seemed like he was red in the face, and he seemed like he was probably intoxicated. Kind of stumbled up to the stand, and at some point, like in the third question, he just goes, "Hey, stop," turns to the judge and goes, "I can go home, load my rifle up, come back and just shoot this guy if you want me to, Judge, save the county all this money." And the judge goes, "We have a for cause challenge." And I say, "Yeah." And then we were laughing about it afterwards. We're like, thank God he said something really dumb, because otherwise we're going to have to inquire whether he'd been drinking or not. And if he hadn't been, maybe that's just the way he looked and the way he walked. And we were just glad he said something crazy like that.
But I was amazed I got put on the jury.
Yeah. Well, that just proves my theory that either the lawyers had a really interesting way of justifying keeping you on, that they thought there was some great reason for that, or they're all sleeping. Which, by the way, can I mention one other thing? I'm going to let you go. I got to go to break, but I got to mention one other thing. One other thing that drives me nuts is there's all these people out there that are opposed to the death penalty. Okay, but they always dutifully tell the truth when you're picking a jury, and then they say, "No, I could never give the death penalty." And I always want to think in my head, like, couldn't you just lie so I could get you on the jury? Obviously we want people to tell the truth because the government's entitled to have a jury that's willing to pull the trigger, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, and what was really interesting about that jury is there were two defendants, two separate lawyers, and one lawyer, his sole purpose in life was to get second degree for his client.
Right.
He said, "Did you ever see him with a gun?" et cetera, et cetera. So, the second lawyer was going after the fact that my client didn't know the other guy was going to shoot somebody.
Right.
And what was, there were witnesses to the crime, and there was a third party who stayed outside who testified about it for a reduced sentence. So,
which, by the way, the people that plea bargain and testify, I mean, you never know. You never know if they're telling the truth. I mean, in my heart, I always say these guys cut a deal and then they say stuff, and sometimes they're telling the truth because there's other evidence to back it up. But when it's just their word, I always kind of cringe because dirty.
This was witnesses to the crime, inside, and one guy was outside. So it's like you have collaborating evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And that's when if you have a co-defendant or an alleged conspirator testifying, the instruction is called the corrupted and polluted source instruction, where the judge basically says you really shouldn't trust co-defendants and co-conspirators, because if they're going to come in and throw somebody else under the bus, they might only be doing it for no other reason than just to share the blame. But if you find that you believe them and you're entitled to, or it's corroborated by other evidence, but you should view them with extreme caution. I think the law's kind of got that one right. All right, I got to go to break.
All right.
Thanks for those stories. They're great. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. That's right. I like the speed. That's why Shane plays that song. But don't break the law, kids. Don't break the law. Bob, you're on the air.
Hello, Bob. Is it for Bob?
Yep.
Hey, about 2 years ago, I was on jury duty in York, and I had to report every day, regardless if I was on a jury or not, which I was glad to do. I mean, I was glad to do my part. But down in Maryland, they call in the night before to see if they have to report, and I just thought that was a lot more efficient use of people's times. What's the latest deal? What do they do now?
Well, every county is different, so I'll give you an example. Franklin and Perry counties bring in all the jurors for one day. We pick all the juries, and then we come back on date certains for the trials. So you're only there for either actually a trial or the jury picking portion. Dauphin County locks you up in the basement. Cumberland County locks you up in a higher floor. Franklin County down there, and that just drives me nuts. They don't even let the jurors bring bottles of water in with them. they strip them of their waters and sodas and everything.
Why can't we do like Maryland does?
Well, and here's the answer. I was just going to say now, I know that Cumberland County and our court administrator, because that's my home county, she does a really good job of always improving things. And in the last couple of years, it seems to me that they are doing, like, you'll notice, like, they'll dismiss the panel at 10 a.m. because they now have juries for all the courtrooms. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, okay, call back, we'll let you know what time we need you. It might be in the morning, or it might be 1 p.m. Or, in other words, it seems like they're getting very, very good about that. And by most instances, if they do keep a bunch of the panel around, and there's a lot of trials going on, by Wednesday or so, they dismiss them early because they know they don't, they're not going to pick, nobody's going to pick a panel on Thursday afternoon or something.
Right.
So some of the counties are getting much more flexible about it. The problem is it's a growth factor. In the old days, there were so few jury trials in the mid-state here that they bring a panel in, they get done with their work, and it was fair. The flow was good. And so there's another weird phenomenon. I could go on and on about this, but I'll finish it up with this. Every county, the judges in a county, the district attorneys in a county, and the public defenders in a county are all kind of just stuck in that county. And they all think that whatever system they're using at the moment is the greatest and best, and the way they've always done it works just fine for them. So courthouses are very slow at improving the way they do things. And it's frustrating for us lawyers who travel around because we'll go to one county where things are very efficient in one area and not in another. And you go to the other county and the explanation you always get is, well, that's the way we do it. It's always worked. And you're like, yeah, but you could do this or that. And so over time, things are moving in the right direction. But courthouses are just, let me put it to you this way. We'd all still be living in caves if the legal system was in charge of the economy, okay?
Well, my point is I was glad to serve, but it just seemed like such a waste of time.
Well, I've told a few jurors over the years, I said, you've now done more time than my client's going to, even if you convict them.
Yeah, really. Okay, thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Oh, boy, just answering your legal questions here, 540-0580, Carl Rominger. By the way, if you need a lawyer and you can hear this signal, we can probably help you. Practice in all areas of the law, and I've got 5 lawyers who work with me, are all good people. We're ready, willing, and able to help you. Bill, you got a second opinion?
Yeah, what happened was my son was arrested for simple assault and went to court, and he did receive a sentence of 2 months for simple assault. And I feel his attorney went into this court case thinking that it was a done deal, that there would be no problem. He probably wouldn't get any jail time or anything, and didn't properly prepare his case. And I called several other attorneys, and I said, could I get some advice from you, or is there anything that maybe I could have a consultation, and you have any suggestions? And there's no attorney that I called would even bother to say, well, hey, I'm sorry, Bill, we can't do that. We can't get involved if your son already has an attorney.
The short answer is I don't think there's anything that prohibits a person from getting a second opinion. I guess some lawyers take the theory that the person's already represented, so they shouldn't have another lawyer. I've never had a problem sitting down with anybody and give them a second opinion.
Well, is that a possibility to call your officers and just be able to sit down and say, hey, what can I do? Is there anything? Yeah,
I'd be happy to look it over. And obviously, I charge a fee for it, but absolutely.
All right, that's fine. That's what I needed to know.
All right, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know why some people don't want to give second opinions. Bill, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, thanks a million for the show. For the Harrisburg area, if a person got DUI and they went to the jail for 2 days or whatever, and now they're out, and now they got somebody else driving for them, and now they want to put in for a driver's permit. On the form, it says something about that it doesn't work for if you've had DUI. But then other people say, well, just put it in, and it does work now. The law's changed. Over.
Long and short of it is, if it's a first offense DUI, the most you're going to lose your driver's license for is 2 months. And after that, you can get an occupational limited license for the remainder of the year. If it's a second offense DUI, there generally is no OLL available to you.
Okay, great. Hey, another thought. You said something about that the lawyers might be asleep in this previous thing.
Yeah.
I saw in a funny movie one time, this old lawyer was kind of bringing this young lawyer along, and he said, object. Anytime you get a chance, you object and object and object. And he says, even if you go to sleep in the courtroom and you wake up and you don't know what's going on, you say, Your Honor, I object. I don't know if that's true or not.
The short answer is it just depends how I'm playing it on any given day. But I've had days where all I want to do is object, and other days where I just try to be really quiet and shut up and see what's going on. But you do have to object sometimes, because if you give the other side too much leeway, they will run with it. And trust me, if I sent another lawyer to sleep at the stick, that's when I start dropping questions.
Last one, I came in late on the program. Now, did y'all talk about that down in wherever it was, the 3 guys that served 18 years and then they pled guilty and then they got off?
Yeah, we did not, but you're talking about the Memphis 3, and the short answer is my grave concern for them is they are innocent, but they just took a bullet so they could get out of jail rather than retry it. If you go to the Innocence Project, I believe so far 273 people have been exonerated from life or death sentences, okay?
Yeah.
There are piles and piles and piles of innocent people in prison. And so all I can remind people is if you're ever on a jury and you think it's so simple and it's so obvious the guy's guilty, remember that it's happened thousands of other times that probably people have been put to death because the jury thought it was simple and easy. A reasonable doubt is something you should find more often than not, in my view. All right, Bill, I got to go. I got to take one more guy here.
Thanks.
Tim, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. By the way, I'm going to have Armstrong Williams on here next week. Just want to remind you. What's going on, Tim?
Hey, who's more responsible for screwing up this country, lawyers or politicians, since most politicians are lawyers? And do you agree with what Shakespeare said about lawyers?
Well, I absolutely agree with what Shakespeare said about lawyers, but if we read the whole quote, he's saying that the entire, that by killing the lawyers, bad things are going to happen, and he's being facetious about it.
Right.
So remember that. You need lawyers and you need law. Unfortunately, it's kind of like Winston Churchill said about our form of government and democracy is that it's terrible and horrible, but it's the best we've come up with so far. Right. My point is this, and this is why I have a libertarian bent. Because at the end of the day, government should only be given powers or act to the extent absolutely necessary, and we should view skeptically any expansion of it. And unfortunately, it's just been creeping ever since our founding fathers kissed off King George and said, "Let's do it on our own." Government's just started to grow again. It's kind of like that blob in the movie. You cut a chunk off of it, and it just keeps growing and growing until it takes up the whole country.
Right. One quick question, though. Do you think there should be a limit of lawyers that are allowed to be in Congress?
I think that there should be
to have a representative government.
I hear you, brother. What I think is there should be an absolute limit on terms. We should get rid of professional politicians and go back to a citizen representative legislature, except then the bureaucrats will run the show. All right, guys, next week I'm going to have Armstrong Williams at 1 o'clock live. So if you ever know about Armstrong, check him out. Hit me up on my Facebook page, and I'll see you live here at 1 o'clock next week.